UFC Seattle, I'm going to give you my full card predictions. We're going to start from the top down. As always, you can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. Before we start, RoboCop, dead to me. Adolfo Vieira, dead to me. Ishmael Bonfim, dead to everyone. But we're going to channel that energy. We're going to put it into the picks this week. The picks from UFC Seattle are going to be the best thing out of that city since the Legion of Boom.
Don't you open your mouth about the best, or I'm going to shut it for you real quick.
Top of the card, bantamweights in the main event, Henry Cejudo, Triple C, looking for his first win in nearly 5 years. Yikes, I know. Granted, he did take some time off for retirement, so it's not like he was losing a ton of fights in between now and then, and his matchups since returning to the UFC, as tough as it gets. Champion Aljamain Sterling, now champion Merab. So of course, these aren't awful losses. He did look solid against Aljamain Sterling, even with the ring rust. Against Merab, he looked good early, but the pace got to him after about a round. And at 38 years old, I don't expect him to be fighting at some crazy pace. I don't think he's going to be able to bring that same kind of momentum and energy that he did when he was on that championship run years ago. But I still think he can give Song Yadong problems in this fight, namely with his wrestling, of course. He has a good low kick as well. Henry Cejudo does a decent enough job of throwing that straight right hand down the middle. I do just worry about what his cardio looks like later in rounds. And to be fair, I think you can have the same concerns with Song Yadong after what you saw him do against Petr Yan, or not do. He looked good early in the first round, and then he just kind of fell apart in the second, and by the third round he looked gassed against Petr Yan, and that's 3 rounds. We got 5 rounds on tap here, but the other side of this is we have seen him look good over 5 rounds. We saw him look strong over 5 rounds against Ricky Simon, against Chris Gutierrez, so the opponent might have made the difference. The moment a guy like Petr Yan hurting you with strikes, mixing things up, giving you a lot of different things to think about, and being effective in it as well, those all probably factored into Song Yadong not looking great in the 3rd round. But in those 5-round fights, he was in control of it. He was clearly the better fighter, especially the better striker, and I do think that he's the better striker in this fight as well. He lands heavier punches than Cejudo, extends combinations a bit better, and tends to throw more. On top of that, you'll see he's the taller, longer, younger guy, which I think is going to help him when he's standing. I think the real key here is, can he stuff takedowns and deal with the leg kicks? If he can, he's going to be just fine. I actually like the younger man in this one. I think he gets it done, and I think he wins by knockout. Not so sure Henry Cejudo has too much left in the tank. This might just be like, let me get a couple more checks, because he took the time off, he came back, he got his title shot, he fought a contender, he came up short both times. Former double champ in the UFC, so they're going to give him his respect, but the reality is, you look at where he's ranked 7th in the world in a pretty deep division. He hasn't won a fight in nearly 5 years. He has no wins over anybody who's currently on the UFC roster. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for him to be in this spot, frankly, so give me Song Yadong to win this fight by knockout. In the co-main event, we have a much better fight between Brendan Allen. He's fighting Anthony Hernandez. This should be the main event, in my opinion. I wish we got 5 rounds of this. Crazy that we have 2 actual contenders in this spot behind Henry Cejudo. I don't like it, but here we are. Now, Fluffy Hernandez is a maniac. The pace he's bringing to the middleweight division, absolutely sickening. You don't really see that from guys this size, and he's breaking dudes damn near every time. And we've talked about this before. If you are a middleweight and you get that document, you get that contract that says, hey, you got to fight Fluffy Hernandez, you know that you're in for the most annoying matchup possible in the division. And I think it's annoying because most of the guys that are fighting him know that he's not stronger than them. He's probably not a better striker than them, but he's just going to dog them no matter what. He's relentlessly getting guys to the mat. He's threatening submissions over and over again, and if it's not immediately there, he's not going to force it. He's not going to do a whole lot of adjusting. He's just going to go back to wrestling, and then once he's seen an opportunity, he's going to jump back on your neck again and rock back and forth. So even on the mat, he's constantly giving you different looks, and I think that's one of the most difficult things for these guys to deal with at this weight. And we see him picking up finishes late in these fights. Like, even look at the Rodolfo Vieira fight where he ends up submitting him, which is a huge feather in his cap to submit Rodolfo Vieira. But you look at the position that Vieira was in, he just didn't want to be there anymore. It wasn't like he got caught with something and couldn't get out, or he got caught with something and couldn't try to fight through it. He just didn't want to anymore because he was done. We keep seeing Fluffy finish guys late, and that's why I want to see him in more 5-round fights like we saw against Michel Pereira. Just completely broke Michel Pereira, finished him in the 5th round. But he doesn't have 5 rounds to do it this week. He has 3 rounds to do it against a very tough challenge in Brendan Allen, who's one of the better grapplers in the division. He's submitted a ton of guys in the UFC, but he does it differently than Fluffy does. He hurts guys with his hands hands typically, gets him on the mat, finds the back, wins by rear naked choke, which is what makes him one of the better grapplers in the division, but it's also the reason why I think he's going to struggle against a guy like Hernandez, because he's not the kind of fighter who's going to catch you with a guillotine or a darce or an anaconda or a triangle or something slick off his back like that. He does his best work when he's in a dominant position, but guys don't really get to those spots against Hernandez all that often. Fluffy's so offensive, he forces guys to play a lot of defense, and I think that's where Brendan Allen finds himself this week. I think he's going to have to defend a lot of takedowns. He's going to have to try to work back to his feet, try to execute a sweep, get up from his back, and it's not like he has stellar takedown defense either. I think Fluffy is the better MMA wrestler. I think the pace, even though it's only 3 rounds, can give Brendan Allen trouble. So I'll take the favorite here to get his second win over Brendan Allen. They fought in LFA and Fluffy beat him over 5 rounds, mostly just out scrambling him. He was the one that was taking Allen down. I think we just see a lot of that this week. So I think he beats him again, but this time I don't think he needs the judges. I think we get a classic round 3 stoppage from Fluffy this week. Give me Anthony Hernandez to win this fight inside the distance. And real quick, if you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm. I know you know how it works. Next we have Rob Font. He's fighting Jan Matsumoto. Tough one at bantamweight because Rob Font's coming in here with the roof missing.
Fuck what, motherfucker? Shut the fuck up. Motherfucker, I got a ball head.
We saw what it looked like in the corner for Calvin Kattar last week, but this is the first true test, in my opinion, for young Jan Matsumoto. The guy's undefeated, good amount of experience, a lot younger, the body has fewer miles on it, hasn't taken a ton of damage in competition, fought through adversity as well, like you see that fight against Dan Argueta, for example. He was losing. Ends up coming from behind to get the submission and winning that fight. And you see guys that have great records that have just smashed people along the way, crushed cans. I don't think we have the same situation here. This guy brings it. He knows how to fight well from behind even when things aren't going his way. I love to see that. Now on the other side, Rob Font's been doing this forever, fighting the best of the best. You obviously love the boxing that he brings in each and every fight, but especially in this one, he's the better striker by far. Taller, longer. I expect him to stay busy with that snappy, crisp jab. He does tend to get taken down a lot, but what I like about Rob Font is that he's not doing too much settling on the mat. Jan Matsumoto is going to be trying to take him down. He is going to take him down probably 3 or 4 times in this fight, but I think Font's going to be able to get back up to his feet effectively. And I say that because we've seen Matsumoto now shoot a bunch of takedowns and come up empty over and over again. In his last 2 fights combined, he shot 11 times. He only secured 3 takedowns with very little control time to come along with it. And even in that fight against Dan Argueta, that was a guillotine that he won by. So it's not like he got on top, worked his jiu-jitsu, and found himself in a good position, right? So I think that even though the takedown threat is there, I don't think it's going to be a huge difference maker in this fight unless he's able to do it at the end of a close round and steal that round on the scorecards. But when you look at the price between these two, I think the value is definitely on the Rob Font side. He's seen better fighters. He's lost early rounds and come back to win. I think he's going to look great on the feet in this fight, throwing those long boxing combinations. And in a full-size octagon, I expect him to use a lot of movement here as well. He's a vet. He's been there. He's done that. I think he frustrates the younger fighter, and he should be the first dog to get it done, at least on the breakdown, because opposite. So give me Rob Font to win this fight. I think he wins on the scorecards. Give me Font by decision. Next we have a fight between the fighting nerds' own Jan Silva. He's fighting Melsik Baghdasaryan this week. I really wanted to take the dog shot on Baghdasaryan, especially at these wide odds. But it's just really hard to go against Jan Silva after what he's looked like in the UFC so far. Undefeated in the promotion, 3 fights, all knockouts, and he's knocked off some pretty significant chins. First and only man to knock out Charles Jourdain, finished Drew Dober, although it was a cut, but he was still working him up until that point. He's a male fighting nerd, so you know that means he's got that plot armor. He's probably not going to lose anytime soon. And Melsik Baghdasaryan, decent striker. I don't want to say he's like this elite MMA striker. I'm not ready to say that yet. So he's a decent MMA striker, at least at the UFC level, but he's also one-dimensional, right? He's not going to be looking to mix in takedowns. When he is taken down, he just wants to get back to his feet. He's not going to threaten much off of his back, and I think the power difference is firmly on the Silva side this week. I think Baghdasaryan's going to have moments because I think he's going to be able to punish that forward movement of Silva by throwing kicks to the body, spinning kicks, front kicks, things like that. But in the in-betweens, that's when Silva's going to land his shots. But more importantly, I think Silva wrestles here. That gym masters of game planning, or at least it's looked like that so far over the last couple of years, and that's where Silva's going to have his biggest advantage, is getting this fight to the ground. We saw this guy get submitted by Josh Culibao. I know it happened in a flash. He turned his back. Culibao just jumped on him, got the hooks in, sunk in a choke right away. So it's not like he got worked on the mat, but if there's anywhere where this guy is weak, it's going to be on the mat. And I think that Silva's going to take the path of least resistance here because that's what their gym likes to do. So give me Jan Silva Silva to win this fight. I think he wins inside the distance. I think a submission is very likely here. And I think Silva inside the distance is one of the better plays of the week. That's probably going to be on the official betting article this week, which if Gregory Rodriguez did his job, we'd be just fine. But that's okay. Ebbs and flows in this game. I think that this week we turn up with these 12 fights because I feel like it's pretty straightforward. If you want the official betting article, DFS strategy guide, lineup optimizer, data model, all that good stuff, you can find it linked in the description and in a pinned comment. Back to the breakdown. Next, we're looking at a fight between Alonzo Menifield. He's fighting the juice box, Julius Walker. Julius Walker is one of many fighters that are making their UFC debut this week. And fun fact for you, Alonzo Menifield is 3-0 against debuting fighters in the UFC. Does that trend hold? I don't know. I do like that Alonzo Menifield has the experience edge. He's fought a lot better competition. He has more fights under his belt. I think he has more UFC fights than Julius Walker has fights overall. And I'm gonna assume he has better cardio, but this is just an assumption because Julius Walker does have a 100% finish rate. We don't know what he looks like outside of the second round. We've only seen him go to the second round once in his career, and he ended up finishing it in that round. So if the fight gets extended, I think there's a good chance that Menifield ends up taking over just because we might get a lot of nervous energy, jitters. We might get that adrenaline dump from making your debut, especially in front of a live crowd. This isn't like it's in the Apex. So Julius Walker might want to keep an eye on him. You might want to live bet Alonzo Menifield after round one if it gets to that point. I do like that first round out of Julius Walker though, because he looks for takedowns early and often. You'll see there, tall guy, long guy, but he's not really using that length at striking range. He does like to get his takedowns and he likes to be the one on top. Alonzo Menifield has dealt with wrestlers before. Normally he's looking for takedowns of his own, but I think this is going to be a grappling heavy fight, and I think that Julius Walker probably finds himself on top early. And I'm always giving Alonzo Menifield his flowers. I think he deserves it. Dude showed up as just a freak athlete, somebody who was very green, very raw, and has developed into a full-fledged mixed martial artist. But I'm worried about him at this age, especially after the last two fights. He came off of two really bad knockout losses. First one was a 12-second knockout against Carlos Olberg. Took a ton of damage in the fight after that against Azamat Murzakanov, and he did that in a 90-day window. So I could see why he's taken so much time in between that and now. But I don't like that at all at his age. Now, Julius Walker, pretty scrappy from the few fights that I saw. Again, he's going to make it a grueling, grappling kind of fight for the first few minutes, but once he gets on top, the ground and pound is heavy. He wraps up submissions decent enough. I think he has more ways to win this fight than Alonzo Menifield does. He's a lot fresher, and I think he's poised to have a great first round, even if he doesn't finish it in the first round. If Alonzo Menifield were the dog here, this would be a spot that I would probably just stay away from, but to get plus money on a guy who's 12 years younger, bigger, he's undefeated, I think we'll take another underdog here. Give me Julius Walker to win this fight inside the distance. Next, we have a fight between Iwan Cutelaba. He's fighting Ibo Aslan this week. If Cutelaba beats me, he beats me. That's how I felt about him for a long time. Not a guy you can trust. Ibo Aslan, on the other hand, has looked good in the UFC. He went to war with Anton Turkalj, ends up finishing him in the third, defended a lot of takedowns in that fight, showed heart, showed cardio, which were really the big question marks coming in. Can this guy fight late? He can. He followed that up with the easiest fight of his life against Raffael Cerqueira, who really shouldn't have showed up that day, and I got some choice words for that guy when we get to him later in the breakdown. But I like the power. He's clearly very strong in the clinch. He's a lot fresher than Cutelaba, and I trust him a lot more. I think he ends up winning this fight. I think he does it early. I think he wins by knockout. Cutelaba's coming off of a win, which means he's due a loss. Not a guy who's going to string together a whole lot of wins in the UFC, so give me the power, the size, the youth, the momentum. Give me Ibo Aslan to win this fight by knockout. Next, we're looking at featherweights. I've got Andre Fili fighting Melk Costa this week. Looking like pick'em odds, and I love that. I love when we have fights that look like this because we got to get it right. Now, normally, I'm going to go back and forth, tell you what one fighter does well, what the other one does well, where the advantage is, but I think this one's pretty straightforward. I feel like this is like Angela Hill at pick'em odds last week, although that was somehow a split decision. Come on. The right fighter won, ultimately, but Angela Hill was the play, for sure, and I think this one is pretty straightforward as well. I think Melk Costa is the play. He matches up physically well against Fili, who's somebody who typically is enjoying a bit of a size advantage. Costa fights out of a good gym alongside Joe Anderson Britu, who we saw dispatch of Andre Fili pretty easily. Costa's the younger man. I would say he's the better grappler as well, and Fili's solid everywhere. He can wrestle, but I think Costa Costa might be a step ahead on the feet and on the mat. Plus, Andre Fili finds himself in a lot of close fights. He's been on the right side of a lot of split decisions, while Melk Costa's got a higher finishing rate, only one split decision in his career. And lastly, Andre Fili's got a negative striking differential, and that data comes from UFC fights. So sometimes when you hear people say, oh, this guy's got a negative striking differential, and he's got 2 fights in the UFC, that doesn't really mean anything. But for Andre Fili, he's got a ton of fights in the UFC, like over 20 fights in the promotion. So it's a big sample size. It's most of his career. So if we see a negative striking differential, the truth is he gets hit more than he hits his opponent. He's also got really low striking accuracy on paper, which is not something you would see with a guy with this many fights. Normally the vets know where to put him. He's whiffing on a lot. And as far as the grappling stats go, it shows that he's not the most effective grappler either. I think Andre Fili has made a career off of being decent everywhere, being scrappy enough, getting in close fights, and being on the right side of these decisions more often than not. But in this fight, I'll take the younger man, the more well-rounded fighter to get it done. I love him at these odds. Give me Melk Costa to win this fight by decision. Next, we have another debuting fighter, and if these fights are out of order, I apologize. I've seen the bout order across multiple websites change several times throughout the week, so I don't really know, but we're going to get through all of them. Nick Klein making his UFC debut against Mansur Abdul-Malik. This was supposed to be Antonio Trocoli against Abdul-Malik. He intelligently ducked smoke. Now Nick Klein steps in, somebody who was going to be in the UFC anyway. They just hadn't gotten him a fight yet. He picked up a nice quick win on Contender Series. Fights out of a gym with other UFC fighters as well. Talented dude, but he's standing in front of what looks to be right now an unstoppable force. Mansur Abdul-Malik just hits too hard. He moves too fast. Scary combination for a debutant in this spot. I'm going to take Mansur Abdul-Malik to win by knockout, and I'm going to keep picking him until he gets some ranked opposition, I'd say. Next, we have friend of the show, Ricky Simone. He's fighting Javid Basharat this week, and Ricky Simone needs a win in a bad way. 3-fight losing streak, something I never thought I'd see. Now, to be fair to Rick, he has ran into some stiff comp. Vinicius Oliveira looks like the truth at 135 pounds. Mario Bautista hasn't lost a fight in years and is ranked in the top 10. Song Yadong is ranked in the top 10 and headlining this very card. So the losing streak, I would say it's excusable because Ricky Simone's not going to find himself fighting for a title or anything. He finds himself now in a spot where he typically thrives, an unranked bantamweight outside of the Vinicius Oliveira fight that we just saw. We're not going to see him climb through the ranks and one day challenge for the title, but he is a really good test down at this level to see if you are worthy of fighting ranked opposition or not. Now he's got to deal with Javid Basharat, and it's very interesting to see how Basharat's going to bounce back from his first career loss, because the man flopped as a -900 favorite against Amin Zahabi, and if you want to say robbery, I don't agree. It was a close fight, but I think he was outstruck, and that was the first time we've actually seen him outstruck in the UFC. He looked like he was having an off night, and he looked like he was fighting as if he felt like he was winning, which is scary. From my point of view, Zahabi was landing the better strikes. He looked a bit cleaner. He was landing at a higher clip, and Basharat just looked like, again, just kind of not himself, and he came up empty on takedown attempts throughout that fight. I do think that Javid Basharat, though, is very smooth, very technical, fights smart, is going to keep winning fights in the UFC, but I would say that I've been less and less impressed with him kind of since his debut. And that's not because I feel like he's putting together poor performances, but he came into the UFC undefeated with a 100% finish rate, hasn't sniffed a finish in the UFC. Closest thing he's come to finishing a fight in the UFC is snapping Victor Henry's pickle. And he hasn't attempted any submissions through 5 UFC fights. He has no knockdowns either. He's in control of these fights, he's managing them, but he doesn't seem like he's the most dangerous. And for Ricky Simone, you saw that loss against Song Yadong, a power difference. Song Yadong kept hurting him with punches. I think against Vinicius Oliveira, physicality difference. I think Vinicius Oliveira was a bit stronger than he expected. Mario Bautista stuffed a bunch of takedowns, torched Simone with volume, but Basharat doesn't throw that hard. He's not landing a ton of strikes. He's not throwing a ton of strikes. He likes a pretty fight, while Ricky Simone likes a gritty fight. So I think with the line being this wide, I like the value on Ricky Simone. I think that he's going to shoot multiple takedowns like he always does. And when I say multiple, I mean like double-digit takedowns. This guy wants the fight on the mat. That's what he does best. He's going to give you those each and every round, and it's up to Javid Basharat to stuff these takedowns. And I don't know if he's going to be able to do it over and over and over again. Plus, Ricky Simone's probably going to be the guy that's moving forward for most of this. So just the optics of it all, I think, are going to help swing the judges toward Ricky Simone's side. I think he's going to get big takedowns here. I think he's the physically stronger fighter, and I think he needs this win more than ever. And this is probably the best matchup that he's gotten in the last couple of years, to be frank. So give me Ricky Simone, friend of the show, to win by decision. Next, we're looking at a fight between Austin Vanderford. He's making his UFC debut against Nikolay Veretennikov, who fought Danny Barlow in his debut, and I think that might have been on short notice. Looked okay against Danny Barlow, looked great late in that fight, and I think that's important. I think that he ends up knocking this dude out, though, and I think he does it early. When Vanderford loses fights, it's because he's getting knocked out. It's typically happening early. Veretenikov's got two things that are really working for him this week: a great chin and dynamite in his hands. It's a long time coming. This guy's 35. The other guy's 34, but almost 35 as well. So it's not like he's fighting this young, hot prospect. These are guys that are vets that have been fighting MMA for a very long time. I think he's going to bully Vanderford here. I think Vanderford's going to end up looking for takedowns. He's going to come up empty. Veretennikov trains with some guys like Marvin Vettori, for example, right? He's used to being bullied by people in practice. Now he's going to do the bullying this week. I think he knocks this dude out, and I think he does in the first or second round. So give me Nikolay Veretennikov to win this fight by knockout. Another debutant this week fights Nursulton Ruziboev. It's McConico. I like Nursulton Ruziboev, especially at 185 pounds. I don't think this dude at 6'5" needs to be fighting at 170, and because this fight is a short notice replacement, fortunately we get to see him at the proper weight class, because he was supposed to fight Rinat Fakhretdinov here and he would have been in trouble. But now he gets an easier opponent on short notice, making his debut in the division that he should be fighting in, and McConico making his debut at nearly 35 years old. Come on. He's on a win streak, which is great. Fights out of the same gym as Jared Cannonier, right? So he's probably on the UFC's radar, but this is a big step up in competition for him. The guy's athletic enough, coordinated enough to be a step ahead of the average regional scene middleweight that he's going to fight. But when you watch the film, nothing really jumps off the page. He's not super explosive. The level of competition isn't there. I think he just understands the game a lot better than the guys that he's been matched up with lately. But Ruziboev is long on experience. He's going to enjoy a nice height advantage coming into this one on a full camp, preparing for an opponent that wants to take him down as well, just like McConico does. So I like the training situation. I like the preparation. He's a big favorite here for all the right reasons. I think he should win inside the distance. I like him to get it done in the first or second round. I would take the under in this fight, and the betting lines, or at least the round lines that I've been giving out in these videos, have been money for the last 4 events. Even in the Jose Delgado Conor Matthews fight, I'm telling you, take the under 1.5 rounds. It's the best bet of the night, and that's what it is. And I think you can do the same thing here. Take the under, because this fight does not last that long. Give me Nursulton Ruziboev to win this fight inside the distance. And the last fight that we're going to break down, the first fight of the night, is Modestas Bukauskas. He's fighting Raffael Cerqueira this week, and I'm going to tell you right now, Raffael Cerqueira is a fraud. We got to lock this guy up, throw away the key. I believed he would rise to the occasion in his UFC debut, and he turned in one of the worst UFC debuts of all time. He looked like he didn't belong in the UFC, and he might have one of the weakest resumes coming into the UFC since CM Punk. And now he has to fight a guy who not only has wins in the UFC, but got cut from the promotion and fought his way back. And this isn't like a Vince Morales cut and fought his way back kind of situation. Even though Vince Morales could have won the fight if he just decided, let me stay on top instead of jumping for these ridiculous submissions that weren't even close. But this is the best version of Modestas Bukauskas we're ever going to see. 31 years old. I believe he's training with the likes of like Tom Aspinall. He has more ways to win. And last week, not to reference last week so much, but here we are. I'm sitting here, right here, in this spot. This is where I record the videos, if you didn't know. I'm sitting here and I'm telling you, I think Gabriel Bonfim has more ways to win this fight. But I'm going to take Chaos Williams because I believe in the power. That's dumb. That's not smart. And we got to learn from those kinds of mistakes. If a guy has more ways to win, you just pick that guy because the probability is on your side. At least that's what I think. Modestas Bukauskas has more ways to win this fight. If he wants to strike, I think he gets the better of those exchanges. If he wants to take this guy down, I think he's going to be able to do it with ease and stay safe and stay heavy on top and not lose position. I think he's got better fight IQ. He's fought a higher level of competition. He's seen better fighters. Even in his last fight against Marcin Prachnio. Marcin Prachnio is a better fighter than this guy. So all signs point to him having a good night. I think that he picks up another finish here. He has more ways to win. Kunith. Think about it. Modestas Bukauskas to win this fight inside the distance. If you've made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm. I'll see you later in the week for final picks. Let's go.